The Princess Bride by S. Morgenstern. Adapted by William Goldman. This is my favorite book in all the world, though I've never read it. How is such a thing possible? I'll do my best to explain. As a child, I had simply no interest in books. I hated reading. I was very bad at it, and besides, how could you take the time to read when there were games that shrieked for playing? Basketball, baseball, marbles, I could never get enough. I wasn't even good at them, but give me a football and an empty playground and I could invent last-second triumphs that would bring tears to your eyes. School was torture. Mr. Aginski, who was my teacher for the 3rd through 5th grades, would have meeting after meeting with my mother. I don't feel Billy is perhaps extending himself quite as much as he might, or when we test him, Billy does really exceptionally well considering his class standing, or most often, I don't know, Miss Goldman, what are we going to do about Billy? What are we going to do about Billy? That was the phrase that haunted me those first 10 years. I pretended not to care, but secretly I was petrified. Everyone and everything was passing me by. I had no real friends, no single person who shared an equal interest in all games. I seemed busy, but I suppose, if pressed, I might have admitted that, for all my frenzy, I was very much alone. What are we going to do about you, Billy? I don't know, Miss Roginski. How could you have failed this reading test? I've heard you use every word with my own ears. I'm sorry, Miss Roginski. I must not have been thinking. You're always thinking, Billy. You just weren't thinking about the reading test. I could only nod. What was it this time? I don't know. I can't remember. Was it Stanley Hack again? Stan Hack was the Cubs' 3rd baseman for those and many other years. I saw him play once from a bleacher seat, and even at that distance he had the sweetest smile I had ever seen, and to this day I swear he smiled at me several times. I just worshipped him. He could also hit a ton. Bronco Nagurski, he's a football player, a great football player, and the paper last night said he might come back and play for the Bears again. He retired when I was little, but if he came back and I could get someone to take me to the game, I could see him play, and maybe if whoever took me also knew him, I could meet him after, and maybe if he was hungry, I might let him have a sandwich I might have brought with me. I was trying to figure out what kind of sandwich Bronco Nagurski would like. She just sagged at her desk. You've got a wonderful imagination, Billy. I don't know what I said. Probably thank you or something. I can't harness it, though, she went on. Why is that? Well, I think that is probably I need glasses, and I don't read because the words are fuzzy. That would explain why I'm all the time squinting. Maybe if I went to an eye doctor who could give me glasses, I'd be the best reader in class, and you wouldn't have to keep me after school so much. She just pointed behind her. Get to work cleaning the blackboards, Billy. Yes, ma'am. I was the best at cleaning blackboards. Do they look fuzzy? Miss Roginski said after a while. Oh, no, I just made that up. I never squinted either, but she just seemed so whipped about it. She always did. This has been going on for 3 grades now. I'm just not getting through to you somehow. It's not your fault, Miss Roginski. It wasn't. I just worshipped her, too. I used to wish she'd been my mother. I could never make that really come out right unless she had been married to my father first, and then they gotten divorced, and my father had married my mother, which was okay because Miss Roginski had to work, so my father got custody of me. That all made sense. You're gonna be all right, Billy. I sure hope so, Miss Roginski. You're a late bloomer, that's all. Winston Churchill was a late bloomer, and so are you. I was about to ask her who he played for, but there was something in her tone that made me know enough not to. Albert Einstein, too. Him, I also didn't know, or what a late bloomer was either, but boy did I ever want to be one. When I was 26, my first novel, The Temple of Gold, was published, and... 3, 2, 1. When I was 26, my first novel, The Temple of Gold, was published. And they asked me who did I want to send advance copies to that might be an opinion maker. And I said I didn't know anybody like that. And they said, think, everybody knows somebody. And so I got all excited because the idea just came to me. And I said, oh, okay, send a copy to Miss Roginski, which I figured was logical and terrific because if anybody made my opinions, she did. Who? The publicity lady said. This old teacher of mine. You send her a copy and I'll sign it and maybe write a little. I was really excited until this publicity guy interrupted with, "We were thinking of someone more on the national scene." Very soft, I said, "Miss Roginski, you just send her a copy, please, okay?" Yes, by all means, yes." You remember how I didn't ask who Churchill played for because of her tone? I must have hit that same tone too just then. Anyway, something must have happened because he right away wrote her name down asking was it SKI or SKY. With the I told him, already hiking through the years, trying to get the inscription fantastic for her. You know, clever and modest and brilliant and perfect, like that. First name? That brought me back fast. I didn't know her first name. Miss was all I ever called her. I didn't know her address either. I didn't even know she was alive or not. I hadn't been back to Chicago in 10 years. I was an only child, both folks gone. Who needed Chicago? "Send it to Highland Park Grammar School," I said. And first what I thought I'd write was, "For Miss Roginski, a rose from your late bloomer." But then I thought that was too conceited, so I decided, "For Miss Roginski, a weed from your late bloomer," would be more humble. Too humble, I decided. And that was it for bright ideas for the day. I couldn't think of anything. And then I thought, what if she doesn't remember me? Hundreds of students over the years. Why should she? So finally, in desperation, I put, "For Miss Roginski from William Goldman. Billy, you called me, and you said I would be a late bloomer, and this book is for you, and I hope you like it. I was in your class for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grades. Thank you very much, William Goldman." The book came out and got bombed. It didn't get read by anybody. But not true. It got read by any number of people, all of whom I knew. I think it's safe to say, however, no strangers savored it. It was a grinding experience. So when Miss Roginski's note came, I was ready for a lift. "Dear Mr. Goldman, thank you for the book. I have not had time yet to read it, but I'm sure it is a fine endeavor. Of course I remember you. I remember all my students. Yours sincerely, Antonia Roginski." What a crusher. She didn't remember me at all. I sat there holding the note, rocked. People don't remember me, really. It's not a paranoid thing. I just have this habit of slipping through memories. It doesn't bother me all that much, except that I guess that's a lie, it does. For some reason, I test very high in forgettability. So when Miss Roginski sent me that note, making her just like everyone else, I was glad she'd never gotten married. I never liked her anyway. She'd always been a rotten teacher, and it served her right. Her first name was Antonia. "I didn't mean it," I said out loud right then. I'm sorry, I went on. You gotta believe that, Miss Roginski." What happened, of course, was I had finally seen the postscript. It was on the back of the thank you note, and what it said was, "Idiot. Not even the immortal S. Morgenstern could feel more parental than I." S. Morgenstern, the Princess Bride. She remembered. Flashback. 1941 autumn. I'm a little cranky because my radio won't get the football game. Northwestern is playing Notre Dame. It starts at 1, and by 1:30, I can't get the game. Music, news, soap operas, everything, but not the biggie. I call for my mother. She comes. I tell her my radio's busted. I can't find Northwestern Notre Dame. She says, "You mean the football?" Yes, I say. "It's Friday," she says. "I thought they played on Saturday." Am I an idiot? I lie back listening to the soaps, and after a little I try finding it again, and my stupid radio will pick up every Chicago station except the one carrying the football game. I really holler now, and again my mother tears in. "I'm going to heave this radio right out the window," I say. "It won't get it. Won't get it. I cannot make it get it." "Get what?" she says. "The football game," I say. "How dumb are you? The game." "Saturday. And watch your tongue, young man," she says. "I already told you it's Friday." She goes again. Was there ever so ample a dunce? Humiliated, I flick around on my trusty Zenith, trying to find the football game. It was so frustrating. I was lying there sweating, and my stomach felt crazy, and I was pounding the top of the radio to make it work right, and that was how they discovered I was delirious with pneumonia. Pneumonia today is not what it once was, especially when I had it. 10 days or so in the hospital and then home for a long recuperating period. I guess it was 3 more weeks in bed, a month maybe. No energy, no games even. I was just this lump going through a strength-gathering time period, which is how you have to think of me when I came upon the Princess Bride. It was my first night home, drained, still one sick cookie. My father came in. I thought to say good night. He sat on the end of my bed. "Chapter 1, The Bride," he said. It was only then that I kind of looked up and I saw he was holding a book. That alone was surprising. My father was next to illiterate in English. He came from Florin, the setting of The Princess Bride, and there he had been no fool. He said once he would have ended up a lawyer, and maybe so. The facts are, when he was 16, he got a shot at coming to America, gambled on the land of opportunity, and lost. There was never much here for him. He was not attractive to look upon, very short, and from an early age bald, and he was ponderous at learning. Once he got a fact, it stayed, but the hours it took to pass into his cranium were not to be believed. His English always stayed ridiculously immigrant-y, and that didn't help him either. He met my mother on the boat over, got married later, and when he thought they could afford it, had me. He worked forever as the number 2 chair in the least successful barber shop in Highland Park, Illinois. Toward the end, he used to doze all day in his chair. He went that way. He was gone an hour before the number 1 guy realized it. Until then, he just thought my father was having a good snooze. Maybe he was. Maybe that's all any of this is. When they told me, I was terribly upset, but I thought at the same time it was an almost existence-proving way for him to go. Anyway, I said, huh? What? I didn't hear. I was so weak, so terribly tired. Chapter 1, The Bride. He held the book up then. "I'm reading it to you for relax. By S. Morgenstern, great Florinese writer. The Princess Bride. He came to America, S. Morgenstern, dead now in New York. The English is his own. He spoke 8 tongues. Has it got any sports in it? Fencing, fighting, torture, poison, true love, hate, revenge, giants, hunters, bad men, good men, beautifulest ladies, snakes, spiders, beasts of all natures and descriptions, pain, death, brave men, coward men, strongest men, chases, escapes, lies, truth, passion, miracles." "Sounds okay," I said, and I kind of closed my eyes. "I'll do my best to stay awake, but I'm awful tired, Daddy." Who can know when his world is going to change? Who can tell before it happens? That every prior experience, all the years, were a preparation for nothing. Picture this now, an all but illiterate old man struggling with an enemy tongue, an all but exhausted young boy fighting against sleep, and nothing between them but the words of another alien, painfully translated from native sounds to foreign. Who could suspect that in the morning a different child would awake? I remember for myself only trying to beat back fatigue. Even a week later, I was not aware of what had begun that night. The doors that were slamming shut while others slid into the clear. Perhaps I should have at least known something, but maybe not. Who can sense when revelation is in the wind? What happened was just this. I got hooked on the story. For the first time in my life, I became actively interested in a book. Me, the sports fanatic, me, the game freak, me, the only 10-year-old in Illinois with a hate-on for the alphabet, wanted to know what happened next. What became of beautiful Buttercup and poor Wesley and Inigo, the greatest swordsman in the history of the world? And how really strong was Fezzik? And were there limits to the cruelty of Vizzini, the devil Sicilian? Each night my father read to me, chapter by chapter, always fighting to sound out the words properly, to nail down the sense. And I lay there, eyes kind of closed, my body slowly beginning the long flow back to strength. It took, as I said, probably a month. And in that time, he read The Princess Bride twice to me. Even when I was able to read myself, this book remained his. I would never have dreamed of opening it. I wanted his voice, his sounds. Later, years later even, sometimes I might say, "How about the duel on the cliff with Inigo and the man in black?" And my father would gruff and grumble and get the book and lick his thumb, turning the pages until the mighty battle began. I love that. Even today, that's how I summon back my father when the need arises. Slumped and squinting and halting over words, giving me Morgenstern's masterpiece as best as he could. The Princess Bride belonged to my father. Everything else was mine. There wasn't an adventure story anywhere that was safe from me. Come on, I would say to Miss Roginski when I was well again. Stevenson, you keep saying Stevenson. I've finished Stevenson. What now? And she would say, well, try Scott. See how you like him. So I tried old Sir Walter, and I liked him well enough to butt through a half a dozen books in December. A lot of that was Christmas vacation when I didn't have to interrupt my reading for anything, but now and then a little food. Who else then? Cooper, maybe, she'd say. So off I went into the Deerslayer and all that leather stocking stuff. And then on my own one day I stumbled onto Dumas and D'Artagnan, and that got me through most of February, those guys. You have become, before my very eyes, a novel-holic, Miss Roginski said. Do you realize you are spending more time now reading than you used to spend on games? Do you know that your arithmetic grades are actually getting worse? I never minded when she knocked me. We were alone in the schoolroom, and I was after her for somebody good to devour. She shook her head. You are certainly blossoming, Billy, before my very eyes. I just don't know into what. I just stood there and waited for her to tell me to read somebody. You're impossible, standing there waiting. She thought for a second. All right, try Hugo, the Hunchback of Notre Dame. Hugo, I said. Hunchback, thank you. And I turned, ready to begin my sprint to the library. I heard her words sigh behind me as I moved. This can't last. It just can't last. But it did. And it has. I am as devoted to an adventure now as then, and that's never going to stop.